Globally speaking, the headline net value of global financial assets fell some 6.6 trillion euros last year as asset prices went down across board. Private households saw their assets melted by 2.7%, and that's according to the latest report released a few days ago by Allianz, a German multinational financial services firm. In the meantime, South Africa retained its top spot in sub-Saharan Africa, posting 1.7% growth, ranking the 40th richest country in the world. Drilling down into this report for me now is Patricia Romero. She is an economist, insurance and ESG official at Allianz SE in Munich. Good evening and thanks for connecting in, madam. Great to have you in on the show.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for having me.
It's good to have you. Thank you so much. Tell me a little bit more about the state of the global household wealth for last year and what the chief factors were for the decline in assets across board.
Well, a big part of the fall in household financial assets that we saw was driven by securities and by insurance, which fell by around 7 to 5% respectively. Meanwhile, we saw that bank deposits recorded a robust growth of around 6%. However, despite these bitter losses, global household financial assets were nearly 19% above the levels that we saw before the pandemic. This is, of course, in nominal terms. Then when we adjust this growth to inflation, we see that the real growth was a meager 6.6% in the past 3 years. Western Europe, however, does not tell a more favorable story. We saw that any nominal gains that were experienced here were wiped out, and real wealth actually decreased by 2.6% since 2019. So, of course, for savers that complained before about zero interest rates, we see that the real enemy is inflation. And not only since the inflation surge after the pandemic, we see that inflation is a hard beast to beat. And without some nudges or professional advice for long-term savings, most savers will struggle to see real growth in their savings.
But are you still seeing excess cash in the developed economies? Do you think there is still money on the table despite rising inflation, which looks like it's not going anywhere anytime soon?
We see some of it in the US, still some excess cash, but we see that people are also not spending that much. They're being very zealous with their cash, as they should, because of all of the uncertainty that we've been experiencing, not just in the financial markets, but also geopolitically. And I think that consumers are being very wary of where they put their money.
But also, let's talk a little bit about sub-Saharan Africa. Let's bring it all home, where South Africa household financial assets remain at the top of the table for sub-Saharan Africa compared to other developing economies, not just in Africa, but around the world. What's at play here for South Africa? Tell me, Patricia.
Well, as you mentioned, the growth of last year that we saw was 1.7%, which is way below the increase that we saw the previous year of 15.1%. This is a massive slowdown that can be traced down to the insurance and pension portfolio share, which is 55% that in the portfolio of households in South Africa. Of course, we also saw that less cash was put into deposits, 6.6 versus 8.6 last year. But we still see that compared to the pre-pandemic, we see financial assets were actually 22% higher, only in nominal terms. Then when we adjust for inflation, we see that it's around 6% in the past 3 years. Of course, we cannot expect the same level of net financial assets per capita from an emerging market such as South Africa compared to other advanced economies. So when we look at how the results were for other emerging economies, we see that South Africa actually did not fare that poorly when one compares, for example, to Latin America that saw a decrease of 6%. So we see that it's faring fairly well.
Interesting numbers out there from South Africa. But again, when you look at the socioeconomic headwinds out of South Africa, for example, the energy crisis and what have you, do you think there's still a lot more that can be done to promote more household savings in South Africa instead of folks putting their money in deposits, doing the pension, investment, insurance, and perhaps bank deposits, and perhaps even securities, for example?
Yeah, for sure. Promoting household savings in South Africa, as in every country, requires a combination of policies, not only financial education, but also incentives to encourage people to save. There could be tax incentives or tax breaks or deductions for individuals who save or invest in specific savings or retirement accounts. Of course, there could be more employer-sponsored savings programs. There could be more social protection, more debt management, of course, more programs for financial inclusion. But one of the vehicles that we see also in other emerging economies are the community savings groups. If I am not mistaken, they're called stokvels in South Africa. And these are community-based financial institutions that in countries where we struggle with financial inclusion, they could provide a very interesting solution to bring more people into the financial system, to be more inclusive, to create more savings and to help with the social support that is also provided in this type of community savings vehicles.
But are there any other countries in sub-Saharan Africa where you see some level of household financial wealth that could be tracked within the continent outside South Africa? Any other country or region on the continent here?
Yeah, unfortunately, in our report, we only included South Africa. So at this time, I will fail to comply with this question. But for sure, there are some interesting investments that our company is looking at, especially in sub-Saharan Africa, also Northern Africa and other countries in the region.
So we're heading towards the final quarter of 2023. We'll start after the 1st of October. What's the global household wealth looking like so far in the current year, considering interest rates, decisions in the US, among other major developed economies in the US and Europe, in the Bank of Japan and the rest of them? Are we seeing something different this year so far?
Well, we are still hopeful that we will return to growth. Always when there is a slump, even if it's just for base effects, we will see growth. Since we are expecting around 6% inflation, we're expecting that the global financial assets will follow suit. Of course, we're confident that central banks will make the best decision available to them. We've already seen some movements in some developing economies, such as Brazil or Chile, where we've seen a pivot. And it's important for consumers to track these movements and also to see how it might affect their portfolio. However, we're hopeful that we will return to growth this year.
Okay, so what's that play for China, for example? When you look at the regions, by the way, between North America and Europe, you've got China being an outlier. The growth for last year was there, but not as much as it was in the previous year. What's that play?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, of course, China, it's not only challenged by the financial markets, but also because of the geopolitical moves. It's a big mess of a puzzle, and we still have to see where the pieces fit. But yeah, we see that there are movements that geopolitically might also affect the household wealth for sure, especially when consumers are uncertain of what's going to happen next. It plays a big role.
We appreciate the work, the latest reports that you have out there. Patricia, thank you for your time. Have a pleasant evening out there in Munich. Thank you so much, Patricia Romero.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. We appreciate it.